Ooh, it looks different.
Is it going?
It's circling.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
It's live now.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to call the Henrietta Town Board meeting for March 25th, 2020 to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Here.
Councilmember Stafford?
Here.
Councilmember Safranek?
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Here.
Supervisor Schultz?
Here. As always, we will begin with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I will point out that we are conducting this meeting under the modified open meeting law that were put in place as part of the governor's state of emergency in response to the coronavirus pandemic. People can either contribute comments and questions on any of the agenda items, either by typing in on Facebook or by calling. I think I would have written it down the last time you told me the number. Oh, and now she's put it away.
It's 585-444-2218.
Thank you. And I would like to thank Terry Danielle for providing sign language interpreting for this meeting. As we just started, essentially had to jump into the live streaming. We found that we had a lot more participation, including a number from the deaf and hard of hearing community. And so Rob Barley reached out to Terry and she agreed to do the sign language interpreting for our meetings so that our deaf and hard of hearing residents will be able to understand what's going on at the meeting.
Thank
And
you,
we'll try
Terry.
our best not to overtalk each other, but I'm sure old habits die hard. So as Jenny can tell you when she has to take the minutes and put that in. So with that said, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the March 9th, 2020 Town Board Workshop minutes.
Second. Oh, so
Well, we should do each one separate.
separately. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Seconded.
And I make a,
Any discussion on the March 9th Town Board Workshop minutes?
no, sir.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
I make a motion, Mr. Supervisor, to approve the March 11th, 2020 Town Board minutes.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. For miscellaneous communication, I would just like to pass along something from our sewer department. If people could pay a special attention to not flush flushable wipes or other materials down their drains. It's especially important because the coronavirus can live in human waste. And so if you cause a sewer backup in your house, you could be putting your family at risk because it can back up not just your own, depending on where the backup occurs, but it could back up other sewage waste as well. So again, we ask that, as always, do not put diapers or flushable wipes into the sewer because they can cause issues with the impellers at the pump stations. Can I get my first resolution?
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 8-118, 2020, to authorize bills payable from March 17th, 2020 through today.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have Resolution 8-119, 2020, to accept the payment in lieu of taxes agreement extension between 5257 West Henrietta Road, LLC, and the Town of Henrietta for the RITN and Conference Center.
Seconded.
So as I explained in the workshop meeting, the RIT Inn and Conference Center has two uses. One is as a dormitory, which is part of their main core mission and is therefore tax-free. And another portion, which is the Inn and Conference Center, which is essentially conducting business that's not part of their core mission and therefore is taxable. And so rather than try to constantly divide up the parcel and the assessment, which would create a literal nightmare, long ago when that first came into being, they created a pilot agreement based off of basically, if I remember correctly, it's based off of the revenue generated. A portion essentially comes to the town in lieu of taxes. And so this is just extending it for an additional, it comes up for renewal every 3 years, if I remember the terms.
Yep.
Any questions, comments?
Thanks for the explanation.
Hearing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution number 8-120, 2020, to award the bid for the Henrietta Public Library and Recreation Center landscaping project.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions? Anything on Facebook? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 8-121, 2020, to execute a general engineering and planning service contract with Daniel Cornwall, P.E.
Second. Any discussion? Anything on Facebook? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-122, 2000, to execute a general surveying services contract with James H. Missel and Associates.
Second.
Any questions? Any comments? Anything on Facebook? Any call-ins?
No call-in, sir. Just a comment that we're running about a 30 to 45 second lag. So between what's posted online and for what you're saying, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
On my end, I just have a thank you for our close-up interpreter. Thanks, Terry.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 8-123, 2020, to purchase IT infrastructure from the New York State Office of General Services.
Second.
Any discussion? You may have noticed the numbers came down. Andrew was able to refine the quotes and see some additional savings. So
Great.
any questions? Anything on Facebook? Trying to go slowly so that the lag gets in there. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have Resolution 8-124, 2020, to contract professional fire marshal services.
Seconded.
I'll open discussion by personally thanking Terry Eckwell. He was originally due to retire as of 5 p.m. today, but in light of all the issues with the coronavirus, as well as all the issues with civil service and their inability apparently to score a simple test from last October, Terry has agreed to extend his part-time services so that we won't have to go out to contracting for a while. We have been doing some, canvassing some of the people who took the test. We have a few people who have responded, and we will hopefully be interviewing some of them. Our hope is that by the time we're through that process, the list will be out, because conditional employment is not a fun thing. It's basically saying, we'll hire you, but if you turn out to be not reachable, we have to fire you. Not many people want to leave their current job for that.
Right.
So we essentially are stuck till the list comes out. We can at least be making progress towards finding somebody to replace Terry. But again, a big thanks to Terry for his willingness to continue on past his expiration date.
Thank you, Mr. Atwell. Appreciate your services.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution number 8-125, 2020, whereas the Friends and Foundation of the Henrietta Public Library has made 2 donations to the Henrietta Public Library in the total amount of $3,240 for a racial equity workshop and other library programs, and whereas checks in the amount of $2,200 and $1,040 were received by the library director. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks the Friends and Foundation of the Henrietta Public Library for their generosity.
Second.
Any discussion? Obviously, thank you to the Friends and Foundation for their generosity and the work that they do raising this money in order to be able to do those donations.
Yes.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 8-126, 2020, whereas Karen Ingalls has donated $50 to the Henrietta Public Library in memory of James R. Pink, and whereas a check in the amount of $50 was received by the library director. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Karen Ingalls for her generosity.
Second. Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you to Karen for her generosity. Any other discussion? Nothing on Facebook? Just some shouting out in the parking lot, apparently. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
That-
Go ahead.
That's the crowd wanting to get in.
Yeah. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 8-127, 2020, to fund from the general fund the roof replacement for the West Wing renovation project per the 2020 approved budget.
Seconded.
The roof repairs have moved along. The curbs were installed. The new air conditioning units were put on as part of the West Wing renovations. The membrane's been put down, and they're basically working on sealing it up. So our roof won't be a giant puddle with the risk of leaking as it has been.
Right.
Project went really well. That's good.
It did. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. That concludes our resolutions. Do we have any additional public comment? And we'll talk, I ask that now. We'll move into our committee miscellaneous reports, but if anyone has public comments, share them now, and when we spot them, we'll take it, because I am cognizant of the lag present. I don't know what the sign is for cognizant. Hopefully you don't have to finger spell it. So one of the things, just to, in terms of our miscellaneous reports, the town has shifted to essentially in most departments, wherever able, they have split the team up into 2 crews, and they are alternating. One crew works 1 week on, and the other crew is at home, and then the next week they alternate. And we went with it that way so that we did it a week at a time, so that people aren't sharing the same surfaces or the same vehicles, and that there is a full 3 days in between. In addition to doing the wipe down at the end of the work week, it provides an additional 3 days in case there's any lingering virus present. That obviously means our workforce is at about half strength. Some departments don't have that luxury, and have had to continue working through this. But what we've done is at least half of their team is working from home when able to. So, it's obviously something that none of us have ever gone through before. I thank all of the employees for their efforts in this time. And, sometimes it can be scary. We're in the public, and whereas we've largely closed operations and provided a means for people to make payments or get us paperwork through a Dropbox, it's still, we're out, whereas a lot of people are home, essentially more isolated than we are. So, I again thank the employees for continuing to come to work, because a lot of what we do is essential to keep some of the essential services, not just from the town, but also those essential services that the town supports, for them to keep operating. So, like I said, again, thank you for everybody who's put in their time, and hopefully we'll get through this, and we'll keep the number of cases, simultaneous cases, down low enough that people will be able to be on ventilators, respirators, so that they can hopefully pull through on the more serious cases. One of the things, when you look at the numbers right now, the U.S. has a lower mortality rate than the average in the world. Now, we're also a little bit earlier in the whole cycle compared to other parts of the world, but a big part of that has been the response in the harder hit states, moving quickly to try to limit the spread, so that again, we have sufficient hospital beds, we have sufficient respirators and ventilators for those who need it. The area that in New York State that I have the most concern for is New York City, because of its population density. When you think about the number of people the average New Yorker contacts between when they leave their house and they get to work, it's significantly larger than the same case for somebody in Rochester or in Henrietta. So it's not surprising that the vast majority of the cases are in the New York City area. I hope that they're able to, that the measures that they're taking and the governor is put forth helps control this pandemic, because it's a scary thing. It has a higher mortality rate than our seasonal flus. and especially for those who are in the more vulnerable populations. We'll continue to do everything we can. We realize it creates some inconveniences, but obviously projects can be resumed, economies can be rebuilt, but people cannot be brought back from the grave. So we need to minimize as many deaths as we possibly can.
And I just wanted to thank you for your thoughtfulness and your thoroughness in terms of the town employees and the services. I just appreciate your leadership here. I've seen a lot of the clear communication and updates relating what's going on with the town and this current crisis on the social media and everything, and I just really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I agree with that. I was going to
Absolutely.
basically say the same thing. Thank you, Millie.
Yeah, communication is key, Steve. You do a great job communicating. I'd like to also thank our employees and also our first responders in our town that are out there, even more so than anybody else, right in harm's way, taking care of everybody. So thanks to everybody that does that, our ambulance and our firemen and our police officers and stuff
everyone
like
that's
that. They're
working
really
at
in the line of fire.
Hospitals and-
Yeah, especially the healthcare.
Our
Healthcare
nurses, our home
professionals
health
putting in-
aides, yes, those are.
Just, there's a lot of really good people out there working really hard to keep us all safe, and it's very much
Very
appreciated.
much appreciated.
So one of the things I will breach now, it's going to be in our newsletter. Our newsletter is a little bit delayed because of this. But one of the things that the state has not delayed has been the assessment process.
I'm sorry, Steve, the what process?
Assessment.
Gotcha.
So the tentative roll is due out, I believe it's May 1st. Our assessment team has been working diligently to get that completed. We have a special challenge this year because New York State determined that we will have to reassess approximately 13,000 homes in order to be full assessed value. The reason that is important is if you do not have full valuation, then what happens is there is a factor that's included when they determine your county taxes. So if we're not at 100% value, they put a multiplier in. So essentially everybody's county taxes, you pay more than if we're at full valuation. In addition, the senior exemptions, star rebate, so the rebate checks, a number of those programs get reduced by that same factor. And so it hits some of the people who can least afford it because they're on fixed income. So they would see their county and potentially school taxes go up by the multiplier and their exemptions go down. And so whereas we're not pleased with doing that number of reassessments, in talking with the assessor, I agree with her that it would be disadvantageous for our residents to not do them. Most of them will be what's referred to as trending, which basically talks about as neighborhoods go up, the whole neighborhood goes up. The trend applies. There are some that are full reassessment. That means they go on an individual basis and find the comparables, especially in some of those neighborhoods that haven't been done in quite some time. The second problem with the state not pushing back the deadline for this is that assessment letters and the grievance process are going to be happening most likely in the midst of this pandemic. So that will make it much more difficult. We won't be able to have the sale book out here for people to easily find because the virus can live on those pages for a couple days. And so anytime, you never know who the previous people looking at the book. It's just not safe. So we're going to have it online. We have also reached out through Lisa, we'll be reaching out to realtors in the area to be able to help guide residents, because one of the things that's very important, if you are putting in a grievance and you say that the comparables that the town picked aren't good comparables, and you give us reasons why, when you pick 3 comparables, they must be in that sales book or they do not count. And the reason that's important is because some sales are estate sales or they're sold to a relative, and so they're not indicative of what the property's real value is, and therefore cannot be used in valuation. So the state and the assessment team basically put that sales book together of these are the ones that are qualified. They're what's referred to as an arm's length sale, and they can be used as part of that determination. So it's important that you pick properties that are in that book. Since we understand that a lot of people aren't tech savvy or have the ability to do that, we've reached out to the realtors who, oh, by the way, because of the coronavirus, can't do their normal work. So I know Lisa, at least, and I suspect others, were excited to be able to do this, to be able to help and be busy. So, that would be whether online or by telephone, in order to be able to help people through the process. We are also, when we send out the packets, we will be including sample letters and forms and how you can challenge your assessment. I know it sounds strange. Why is the town giving out ammunition for people to challenge their assessments? Because again, the goal of the town is not to get as high a assessed value as possible. It's to get as fair an assessed value as possible. Our goal is to be as close to the true value as we possibly can. If you have information about why your property doesn't meet that, you might know stuff that we can't possibly know. That there's a leaky roof would have to be fixed before the property can be sold. That can be taken into account. So there's things that can be taken into account that affect your assessment. And so in the letter, we'll have those, both the ones that talk about finding different comparables, as well as the form that talks about conditions of the property that could affect its value. And so, as best we can, we're going to explain it. And to be honest, I want to see us keep doing this going forward, even when we're back to having the normal meeting stuff, because again, the more information that the residents have, the better we can get through this process and do it as fair as possible. And one of the things too is if you do it early enough, if the assessor's office agrees with you, I'm not an assessor, so I may be getting this slightly wrong, but I'm fairly certain that if the assessor's office agrees with you, they can do what's called a stipulation, which basically says, we agree with this grievance. And when it goes to the grievance board, it typically goes through. So, again, we're going to try to make the process as painless as possible. One last comment on this, as I've talked about before, raising assessed values does not increase the amount of tax the town collects. What increases the amount of tax the town collects is the budget process, when we basically determine how much we're going to collect. It's called the levy. What happens then is I take the levy and I divide it by the total assessed value of all the taxable properties in town, and that determines the tax rate. Now, the reason it often feels like if the assessed value goes up, I'm automatically going up, because what a lot of politicians do is they'll say, we didn't raise taxes, when what they really mean is we didn't raise the tax rate. They're levying more taxes, but because there's more either new property, so real growth, or a growth in the assessed value, they look at that and they say, well, we can hold the rate the same and the town collects more money. Since I've taken office, we don't report it that way. We report the actual levy, how much we're collecting. So for instance, the change from 2019 to 2020, there was $0 change. We collected no additional tax. Therefore, when you factored in all the growth, both the real growth and the growth due to increased home values, our tax rate dropped significantly. It was in the order of like 4.6, 4.8%. And that's, again, because we collected the same amount of tax, but the values went up, therefore the tax rate went down. Unfortunately, not all the taxable entities do that. You are going to find, as we know, the fire district, now they had to postpone it, but they have a proposal out to build an additional fire district. That's going to increase the fire district tax rate if that passes. It's the last year of their potential as they're growing the number of full-time positions. So you're going to see some other potential up there. We don't know what's going to happen to the county. One of the things that I suspect is going to happen is because the county relies heavily on sales tax revenue, and sales tax revenues are going to be down this year because of the pandemic, that you will probably see an increase to compensate for that. I don't know that for certain, but that's typically, again, there's a lot of places that are probably going to end up with budget shortfalls because of that. This town, thankfully, carries a nice, healthy contingency. It's 20% of our budget, so as long as the sales tax drop and other fee collection drop doesn't equal more than 20%, we'll be okay. But that's to be foreseen. Yes, question?
Our friend Sarah Lippincott, town assessor, said that yes, if we come to an agreement, we can sign a stipulation and the resident does not have to come in front of the Board of Assessment review. So
Great.
yes, you are correct.
So for those,
Sarah.
yep. So thankfully we had our staff watching this as well. So we don't have the majority of our staff in the room because of the coronavirus. Obviously, we're not happy about having to reassess that many, but it's a requirement from the state. And again, when we looked at it, the ramifications of not doing it are significant. There's a number of towns that have canceled their reassessments. Some of them are still at full valuation without them. And so it's easier for them to cancel. Those who aren't, I think they're doing a disservice to their residents because, as I put it, for those who get reassessed, it probably means that you're going to pay more in taxes. If we don't do the reassessment, it absolutely means everybody will pay more in taxes because of that, that factor due to not being at full valuation. Yep.
Sarah also says that any resident can send in a, quote, mail-in grievance, which would not require a face-to-face hearing.
Great. So, again, we're doing as much as we can to protect the residents from the coronavirus as well, and do as many of these services, either mail-in or telephonically where possible, or drop boxes. We've come up with a bunch of different methods to try to satisfy the needs for some of these processes. Rob, you were going to say something?
Do you read my mind?
Yeah.
You're good. I was just wondering, if we didn't do that reassessment, would it affect their star checks or anything like that?
It would. They would drop. Yes.
Okay.
I should say, I'm pretty sure star is one of those.
Yeah.
I know it's a number of the exemptions and rebate checks. Sarah, if Sarah
Maybe
chimes in
Sarah
and
can
confirms
chime in.
star.
We're on that delay, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 30 seconds, Sarah will have an answer for us.
If she types it.
In the meantime, I'm going to comment that Linus is watching. I believe he's still in Florida. It says it's 81 degrees.
Yeah, that would be Florida.
And Ron Goldberg says, thanks to the entire town staff for all your hard work during this time of uncertainty.
Thanks for coming,
Well,
speaking with us, Linus.
While we're waiting, I can just say, and Steve, you hit on it a little bit, that the Henrietta Fire District has postponed their the vote for their bond for station number 6 for March 24th. There's no new date been set yet.
Makes sense.
Any other announcements? I realize there's not a whole lot going on, but there's a few things.
Sarah has confirmed that yes, Star will drop.
Okay,
So it is very important that we do the assessments.
absolutely.
Yes.
No, I would also like to thank the library for all they did. I know they're now permanently closed, but.
Not permanently.
Well,
completely
no,
closed.
sorry.
Temporarily.
Sorry, Adrian, I didn't mean that. But temporarily closed, and I know that I'd heard from a lot of people how much they appreciated what the library staff was doing to still get them literature and things like that, which was really awesome. I talked to a couple other libraries that were really impressed we were doing that.
I will say, I know it pains Adrian when she steps foot in the building to take care of some of the stuff that needs to be taken care of, to see all that material on the shelves and not be able to give it out at the book drop. So we have, I have sent something in to the governor. I'm sure he's inundated, so I don't know if he'll ever see it. I've sent through a couple different things to see if we could possibly get the book drop, the grab and go book service back open, because again, I think it's a great service to people cooped up at home without putting the public or the library staff at great risk, because they basically bring it out, set it down, go inside. The people come out of their car, pick it up, and then when it comes back, it drops into the bin. It's quarantined for 3 days before we put it back on the shelf. So it was a great solution to offer. Becky?
Our friend Adrian is also watching, and she says never permanently, but also we are doing story times online that have been super popular.
Oh, that's
I
great.
was going to say, his children's librarians are still doing story times and other services, yeah.
And she agrees with Steve regarding the grab and go books.
Not often I can get her to agree with me, so I'll take it. I'm kidding. We're usually in agreement on a lot of stuff. Anything else? Any other announcements?
No, sir.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any, hearing no objections, meeting adjourned.
Bye, everybody.